Hello, I'm Catherine Klein. I'm the Vice Dean for Social Impact at Wharton and a professor in the Management Department, and I am delighted to be here interviewing our guest, Jonathan Greenblatt, who has an extraordinary career in the social impact space, every venue within that space. Jonathan, you are a senior fellow at Wharton, and we love having you here. You're a serial social entrepreneur with lots of experience in the business sector. You built several successful brands, including Ethos Water, which many of us may know from buying Ethos Water when we're not buying coffee at Starbucks. So you've had successful exits. You're an experienced corporate executive. You've worked at Starbucks. You've worked with Google. You've been in politics. You were a member of the White House, a director of the Office of Social Innovation and Civic Participation at the White House until quite recently. And you will soon take the role as National Director or CEO of the Anti-Defamation League. So this is business, government, nonprofits. And I think today I want to focus on this title we've said, your experience as a serial social entrepreneur, and talk about the business of social impact.
Sure.
You want to start with when you think of yourself, and you get this, you're obviously comfortable with the label serial social entrepreneur. Let's start with what's a social entrepreneur?
So I think about a social entrepreneur based on a definition that was laid out many years ago by Sally Osberg of the Skoll Foundation and Roger Martin, who's the dean of the Rotman School of Business up in Canada. I think about a social entrepreneur as someone who tries to create change through a market-based approach that's about taking direct action, so not necessarily lobbying or doing advocacy, but literally going in and creating something that is trying to do so in order to create, or let's say fix, a broken disequilibrium. So it's not someone who's trying to do something on the outside that isn't causal, but instead trying to create systems change and repair a difficult societal ill. So the social entrepreneur creates direct action to fix a broken system.
For profit, necessarily?
I think it can be both. So I think you can see social entrepreneurs in the nonprofit space who use that sort of model to attack a particular issue in a field. It could be healthcare, could be housing, could be finance. I personally am more interested in what we've seen in terms of social entrepreneurship in the business community.
Okay. So let's talk about that, social entrepreneurship in the business community. And let's start with Ethos Water. You were relatively early in this space. We've seen a lot of evolution. What did you try to do in Ethos Water? Brag a little bit. What have been the successes and the wisdom of what you created?
Sure. So Ethos Water started with my business partner, Peter Thum. We were roommates in business school at Kellogg for 2 years, which is a lesson for all the young Wharton students out there as they think about their classmates. Peter had this idea of creating a bottled water that would use part of its profits to fund humanitarian water projects as we initially thought about it. He thought about it initially. Over time, we then started the company, and over time our model evolved.
And when did you start the company?
Pete started working on it in 2002, and we came together in late 2002, mid-2002.
And when did you sell the company to Starbucks?
We sold it in April of 2005.
So fast.
Yeah, pretty fast. It's funny. You see this pattern of starting, scaling, and selling on a pretty rapid time frame in Silicon Valley all the time.
Right.
In CPG or in other kind of categories, it's a little less common.
Right.
Nonetheless, the model was predicated on this notion that we could connect consumption to the cause. So if you look at the first generation of social enterprises in the business world, businesses like Ben & Jerry's or Body Shop or Stonyfield Farms, here you had products and brands that were about ice cream or about yogurt or about hand cream, lotion, personal care products.
Right.
That were not necessarily tied to the causes they sought to address.
They were organic, healthier, may have had better supply chain, more.
That's right. That's right. They aimed in that. Like, I think, Ben & Jerry's didn't use recombinant bovine growth hormone.
Right.
But now consumers didn't understand that. And the Body Shop aspired to do things with better sourced inputs from the Amazon. But again, consumers didn't understand that. We thought consumers would understand this basic idea of bottled water, which is kind of an irrational category to begin with, connecting its consumption to clean water issues.
So,
which is a huge global problem.
so what's gotten more familiar, and there is a one-for-one model. So,
Right.
so people may have heard of a one-for-one model. We see that in Tom's Shoes, perhaps most famously. You know, at least, and I know they've evolved their model, but it
Yep.
was, hey, consumers, buy a cool pair of these shoes,
Right.
and we will donate a pair of shoes.
Right.
So Ethos Water is a little bit of a different. It wasn't, buy a bottle of water from Starbucks, or previously you, and we will donate a bottle of water elsewhere. What was it?
So our notion was, if you buy this bottle of water, we initially aspired to donate up to 50% of our profits to fund humanitarian water programs around the world. And I say programs because it wasn't just a project
Right.
or that kind of hardware like a new latrine. Instead, or a new well. And that matters, but the hardware is no good without software. So we also sought to do hygiene education and to create sort of economic schemes that would make the water system sustainable.
Yeah.
So that approach is really different than saying, I'm going to invest in a community here in order to create an ecosystem around water. Is very different than saying, we'll give somebody a pair of shoes.
But it seems like it's different in at least two ways. One is, right, it's a commitment that's around, we're going to donate 50% of our profits. Not, it's not tied to each one of our products we're selling. It's tied to our products, and it's not tied to a particular solution. I'm going to give away a bottle of water. You had more flexibility, more ability to change an ecosystem.
Yeah, I think our approach, so let's take those two things, starting with the latter. I think our approach was more strategic, and the one-for-one model is often more tactical, right? So we were investing strategically versus tactically giving someone something.
Sure.
It's more like, it's not teaching a man to fish, it's creating an ecosystem around, a fishery ecosystem, rather than giving someone a fish, right? But on the flip side, look, I will say that I think Tom's and Warby Parker and these other businesses who are endeavoring to do this model, I think it's admirable. I think we should encourage them.
Right.
I would simply say I think the model can continue to evolve in ways that create more enduring change. And you know what else? Connect the consumers to the issue more effectively.
Though I would argue that when the simplicity of hey, buy a pair of shoes and we'll give a pair of shoes away, may not be the right solution. And I know Tom's has been criticized and has evolved their model.
Yep.
But from a consumer perspective, it's very concrete, very clear.
Well, now you're getting at some of the key. So the consumer wants to understand, hey, I do this, what happens?
Yeah.
So our slogan was, every bottle makes a difference. Helping children get clean water.
Right.
Simple. I buy this water, someone gets water.
Yeah.
But the facile, I buy this water, we give someone a bottle of water, that's crazy.
Right.
And so we thought it would be more respectful of the consumer's intelligence.
Right.
To have a model that was honestly more intelligent and smarter. With that said, I do believe that Tom's and Warby are evolving their approaches to accommodate for what is the complexity of the issues. Sure. And as consumers' awareness has increased, their expectations have increased. And they demand more from these brands than just, I buy it, you give it away.
Right. Right. So, you started this company.
By the way, Tom's didn't start it. You know who started this model? Nick Negroponte started this model. Remember the one laptop per child?
Oh, yeah, sure.
The way he went to market out of the digital lab at MIT.
Right.
And he had a great partnership with companies who helped. You buy a laptop. Initially, he was going to give them away, and then he realized, you buy a laptop here, we'll give one away over there.
Yeah, very interesting. So if that's the start of the one-for-one model, and your company was an early social enterprise, what are you seeing in this space as you look at the new ways that businesses, and let's stick with the business enterprises, the new ways businesses are engaging in social impact, whether you want to be thinking about social enterprise or corporate social responsibility or the places they're blending?
Yep.
What are you seeing that you think this is interesting and there's potential here if we can grow this in the business sector?
What's interesting, I think, is you certainly are seeing lots of innovation in the supply chain or the value chain. More and more.
Give us an example.
Well, more and more businesses are using more sustainable supply chains. So think about a business like, Tesla would be an example, right? So it's a better battery, and it's produced in a way that makes the car more efficient.
Right. We hear this a lot about Nike, for example.
Exactly. So there are interesting models where it could be the inputs, if you will, the materials. It could be the labor force. So there are businesses that are trying to use labor forces, let's say, overseas and give their workers better opportunity. Even here at home, the company in Detroit, the watch company in Detroit is doing this, whose name I can't seem to remember now, very unhelpfully.
Watch, I think it's got the word one in it.
But you're starting to see some interesting models like that. So it could be the labor force, it could be the materials, it could be the way you go to market, right? Like using climate-friendly vehicles to deliver your product, if you will, or something. So that stuff, the supply chain work is interesting. Mm-hmm. And of course, there are businesses who are doing interesting things on the back end vis-a-vis how they give away part of their profits.
Right.
I think the interesting things are happening not in the value chain and in the profit distribution, but on the front end and how these businesses are getting created and how these businesses are measuring their impact.
So great.
So let's talk about both those things.
Yeah.
So the first side, we've seen, and we're here in Philadelphia, which is the headquarters of B-Lab,
right,
the organization that has developed this interesting model of certifying companies.
Right.
And you get that you take their audit and you get that certification and you get this B corporation status.
Right, or there's actually a distinction between the legal status of being a B corporation, a benefit corporation, and the certification process of being B-Lab certified. And the just to clarify, the B-Lab certification is assessing multiple aspects of the company, right? Mm-hmm. What is its workforce? What is its mission? What is its environmental impact? And so on, in all the ways that this could be a mission-driven company.
That's exactly right. So their certification process is what's interesting to me because we're seeing all kinds of businesses start to adopt this, businesses you might not expect. Right. Consulting firms would be an example, or different companies who really don't fit the Ben & Jerry's, Tom's Shoes, Ethos Water model.
Right.
Now, as you were saying, we're now starting to see policy catch up with this as different states are accommodating for and allowing businesses to incorporate as for-benefit companies.
Right.
Using, in many cases, some of the stuff of the BCorp certification process. So that's very interesting because as we see more and more businesses take those principles and put it into their charter,
right,
make it part of the way they serve, not just make it explicit part of their value proposition to serve stakeholders as well as shareholders, that's really different. And that flips Milton Friedman on its head.
Right.
So that's neat. And then, kind of related to this, becomes the way that we measure value.
So let's pause for a moment. I want to get to there. But I know one of the questions that I've heard about this B certification is, okay, this B certification, if you believe in these social missions, you believe businesses can do this, this is good. And yeah, we kind of know that consumers may be interested. But the vast majority of these companies are private companies.
Sure.
A few of them have gone public or been acquired.
Mm-hmm.
But one of those question marks out there is, what happens when they go IPO? Right? Will people look at this company and say, wow, we want to invest like crazy. This has so much of a social mission and an economic mission. Or will they say, that's nice. Economic mission, probably just okay given the social mission. And what are the assumptions that investors may have in their heads about a company that's mission-driven, B certified, and is it worth investing? So that's
an interesting question. I don't think we know the answer yet. Today, as the day we're recording this, Etsy just filed for the public offering 90 days ago. They're going out today. They'll start trading today. We'll have
one case at least today.
Right. And there's another firm, there's an email marketing firm in North Carolina that I think is out, but Etsy will be the most prominent public equity with the B status.
Yeah.
So that's fascinating to see how it plays out when there are questions in the boardroom, shareholders versus stakeholders. When there are questions in the annual meeting, shareholder versus stakeholders. Who wins?
Right.
Hard to say.
Right.
So I think we're going to work those things out. On the other hand, we do have lots of big companies who aspire to be better for the world and don't even have that status.
Right.
So think about Google, for example.
Yeah, sure.
Google's been very explicit with their "Don't be evil" mantra. They don't have B certification. Right. And they are trying to maintain their line. Now, the way they've done it, right, is with the different classes of stock. And the controlling stock, if you will, is owned by the founders, Sergey and Larry. I think maybe Eric Schmidt. But all of the shareholders, the common shareholders, don't have the controlling stock that they do.
Right.
So they continue to make the strategic decisions for the company because of these two classes of equity.
Right. And Whole Foods would tell you, I know we were recently speaking with the co-CEO, Walter Robb. He was very explicit, hey, our purpose comes first and our profits follow. And very much sees the mission-driven elements of Whole Foods.
Howard Schultz would say the same thing at Starbucks.
Right, sure.
Right? We see other corporate leaders beginning to adopt a similar mantra. Richard Branson has started this thing called the B Team with corporate CEOs who are trying to aspire to a dual mission where purpose theoretically comes before profit.
Yeah.
Now, on the other hand, if you don't have any profit,
got to be very clear, right? Yeah,
so
right.
So it'll be interesting to
so
see how this
profit
plays
allows
out.
you, in the ideal world, what we hope we're seeing in this space is that the profit drive a virtuous cycle, right?
That's right.
Purpose drives profit drives purpose.
But we come back to this question that you raised earlier, which is, as we see companies go public and there are shareholders getting involved, how does that actually play out day to day?
Right.
What are the pressures upon those businesses?
Yeah. And then you wanted to talk about the other end of the spectrum.
Oh, measurement.
Yeah.
So I think ultimately, and this may answer the first question, as firms are beginning to develop integrated models to actually measure not just their financial performance, but their sort of social, environmental, et cetera, performance. So out of that B certification process has come something called GEARS, which is a measurement system, which is quite interesting. Mike?
GEARS, it's the
Global Impact Investing Rating System.
Right.
And that is being applied right now to funds to evaluate their portfolio.
Right.
And I think what's meaningful about that is it's creating the conditions in which these fund managers are looking at their portfolio of investments and say, how do we perform?
Right.
And by the way, that may be one of the most interesting things about B-Lab is not the 1,000+ companies who now have the certification.
Right.
Far more businesses have taken the self-audit.
Right.
The fact that they've created the conditions in which entrepreneurs and executives, managers at all levels are thinking about these issues, that alone is a contribution, I think, to the national conversation.
Right. Yeah, no, I've heard the founders speak. I mean, essentially, it's like a checklist that says, I'm not eating enough vegetables, am I? Right? They're reflecting on that.
Yeah, it's like a food plate of firm performance, isn't it?
Right. And the impact measurement piece, I think, is a really important piece to come to in this conversation because, as you know, when we've talked about this in the past, there's so much that's inspiring in this space, but there are parts that are worrisome, right? That companies may come on board without a genuine commitment to social impact, without careful evaluation of what they're doing, and without accountability to create an impact. And there's potential for abuse, I fear, down the line as these kind of businesses become more and more common. So a commitment to impact assessment and to accountability and transparency about this is what we're doing, this is what the real impact of our business is, would seem to be a really important safeguard.
It's absolutely crucial. It's crucial for a couple reasons. So number one, although I think millennials in particular, maybe in part because of social media, they can sniff out what isn't authentic. Mm-hmm. So brands that aren't really true to this are often exposed.
Yes.
So that is a bit qualitative. But on the quantitative side, if we ever really hope to bring capital into this field at scale, if we hope to do the kind of comparative analysis that gives us the ability to analyze those public equities like we were just talking about, so you can compare Whole Foods' performance to SuperValue or to Kroger's or to Albertsons, we need a set of common measures by which we can judge their performance on something other than EPS.
Right.
So I think it's important for that reason. And then thirdly, because if we really hope to create change at scale, we need a discipline and a rigor around measuring, quarter on quarter, year on year, how we're making progress on key metrics.
Right.
So, you manage what you measure.
Sure.
So the advent of measurement systems, I think, augurs well if we want managers to be focusing on this.
Great. Jonathan, it's been fabulous talking with you. We need to pull this to a close, even though we could keep talking for hours, I know. So great
Hopefully
insights.
We can do it again.
I hope so. And great insights on the business of social impact. Thanks.
Thank you.
For
Thank
being
you,
with us.
Catherine.
Thanks.